Water task force?
Yeah. We have a nuisance bar task force that is a multi-agency group. You could probably explain it better than me, but essentially it's, involves multiple departments within the city, police, fire, TLI, county DA's office, liquor control enforcement, health department. Fire department. That's everybody. So there's representatives from all those. And that's when you see them do the, bar compliance checks, that sort of stuff. Those are usually a very coordinated effort.
Right.
Sometimes has good results and sometimes doesn't. Unfortunately, the way liquor laws are in our state, there's a lot of loopholes and a lot of things that happen, especially if they don't have a liquor license, there's less power. Even when they do, it's very challenging to get the liquor control board, which is separate from liquor control enforcement, to actually revoke a license. It usually is a process we call protesting, which is when we either say we don't want this place to have a liquor license because of history with the owner or history of the establishment. That's typically a years-long process to get that done. The most around the bar specifically, the most power sits with the DA. The chief could probably explain 611 more than I can, so I'm going to do that. But the DA does have more authority to do an immediate shutdown of the bar. Even then, that can be very short time.
And you were down in Florida prior to coming back up to Pittsburgh, but you're originally from here.
Yeah, but I retired.
It's a strange retirement.
Yeah.
You got them here.
Right.
I tried that once too, so.
We're back.
Do you guys have any questions directly related to Oakland that you'd like to ask? Zoe,
I didn't want to go first. I didn't want to go first.
Go, Zoe, go.
I was like writing some notes down, and I don't know if this is the right place and you're the right people to talk to, but as an Oakland resident for a pretty long time, and having, I don't know if you heard me saying to Liz that my husband's family has been living in Oakland in the same house since the 40s. All right, so we're Oakland residents. My kids went to school in public school, city public schools, but there was nothing in Oakland. So we're, invested in Oakland. And I find it difficult when there are issues in Oakland, and Oakland has its own issues because of the very young transient population. And every year it's a different problem. And I don't feel that we get enough support or help when we ask for it. When there's a crazy wild party and they're all underage drinking and they're screaming, literally screaming, thinking somebody's going to be killed at 2 a.m. and you call 911 and you kind of giving a little bit of the brush off, like, yeah, it's okay. I'm like, I'm already in my pajamas, and it's upsetting. Help with that, because that doesn't help bring new neighbors into the neighborhood. It kind of makes it harder to live here, and that's one issue is not feeling that we get enough support. And I think a lot of the issues that we have are not just in Oakland, but whole city. If just the laws that were on the books were dealt with, were supported, a lot of the problems would not necessarily go away, but they get much smaller. And some of them are something that sounds like a parking issue, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you realize some of those no parking signs and yellow lines are up there for safety. And cars are parked on both sides of the street, pointing in any direction they want. And there are things that get aggravated. And I feel sometimes that the police are not always helpful or not always supportive. And that would be a good thing for me. I realize I'm a little incoherent. I've had a long day too. It would just be nice to feel that, I don't know, maybe if we could be patrolled a little bit, if we could something, especially on the weekends. If when we get a call to say we can't get out of our driveway because there's a car parked there, that the policeman doesn't come and say, oh, sure, you can get your car out. A couple of times my husband's handed them the keys to a truck. We have a business and police won't do it. Then they'll start ticketing and towing, and that's not a safety issue. But there are other times where it is a safety issue. And getting a call, as I'm driving and I pull over to say, there are these 3 cars that are on the one corner I'm thinking of is Dawson and Bouquet, right at that turn. And if there are 3 cars lined up, you can't turn that corner without hitting another car. And then they're asking, well, I need the license plate number and I need the color. It's like, I've just pulled over a block away where I could find a spot. And you're asking for all these details. If there's another car there that's parked illegally and I've described it incorrectly, will you not do anything? Yeah, it gets frustrating. It gets very, very frustrating. I'm sorry, I'm going on too much, but.
This is something that I hear from other residents on a regular basis. I get phone calls. Yeah, I called the police last night and they came and they drove by and kids ran in 10 directions. I hope none of them got hurt and everything. And then 10 minutes later, they're right back. Okay. Also, we have a couple of houses that just, I've been recording been doing this for 8 years. 8 years I've been recording certain houses. Okay. And they continue to be problem houses. As far as the traffic goes and the parking, it's not just that, it's when I've seen the ambulance try to get up Atwood. They're not based on Atwood, they can't. Fire trucks, they can't. Talk to the guys over here at this fire station. I don't know how they survived this last year with roads closing, roads being dug up, construction here, incredibly poor parking habits. We've got people from all over the country, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Massachusetts, California, everything. They don't really care, they just don't really care. They don't seem to get it that you've got to, play the game so it's safe for everybody. Because one of these days we're going to end up with a situation. Somebody's going to be in an ambulance trying to get down force, but because there's a truck offloading potato chips to CVS, traffic is all stacked up, and somebody will be in that ambulance and they'll pass away. So that's what we're facing. Or say, if we had a fire in the middle of Africa, there's no way a fire truck could, let alone find a fire. They would be very, very lucky to get there. And that is not just that street, that is Parkview, that is Atwood, that is Central, that is Myron, that corner down in Dawson, Chesterfield, Robinson Street is like dodgeball. It's like watching a pinball machine. Everybody's parking on the sidewalks because they have to. And when they park on the sidewalk, that means the students are walking in the street. We're not getting any enforcement on that. So we need, when the commander came to Oakland last week, I said, is there any way we can just get like the last 3 weeks of solid hardcore ticketing? So that they understand that they can't go on with this, that this has to change. Okay, so they get the message. I know it can't be maintained on a long-term basis, but something has to be done before there is a serious loss of life. Somebody's really hurt. And it's just, it's very frustrating. I get these calls and I'm like, I know, yeah, I 311 that. Yes, yes, I wrote to, yes, I called them. And I'm spinning my wheels and I feel really bad because I turn around to the residents and say, okay, I've done everything I can. Please, please, please. When you call the police, ask them for a report number. If you don't want to come outside, call me. I will come over and I will get a report number. I'll stand because they're afraid to be seen. by the students. Well, not all, we have a couple of people that are not afraid of it. But it's just a really unhealthy situation. And the saddest part is, this is not the majority of the students. This is a small group. Really is, I mean, maybe 8% of the students. The rest of them, they're out collecting garbage and they're helping clear out things and helping seniors and stuff. And this small group is just making life unbearable, not just for the residents, but also for the students. We need the support coming from you guys, also from them, also from the Pittsburgh Parking Authority. Okay. We need, I know you're triaging the priority, it's hard. When you have a call on the south side, something down at town. I know that's the priority over somebody calling from Juliet saying, it's 3 in the morning and there's 500 people in this backyard across the street from me and they have music. And I see that, but it still has to be addressed. It's still a matter of their quality of life. Students, residents, the people that come forward. And we're just not seeing that.
And Oakland brings in a lot of money between the hospitals and the universities. There's money around there, and you're kind of making the residents, the long-term residents, feel this big, because we end up. One time, quite a few years ago, I told a few of the students across the street that would have these paid parties. There was a big sign, $10, and there was an arrow in the back. And like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, well, the sign's still there. And I said, I'm not here to finish raising you. Your parents let you loose on us. You know, and my kids they finished college a couple of years ago and they went to Pitt. And don't think I wasn't telling them, if you are a bad neighbor and I found out about this, you're in trouble. And because they would get up in the middle of the night too for screaming or whatever.
I do. I have students call me. I have a test tomorrow, and the two doors down, or they've got 200 people in their backyard. And the new thing we're seeing is hot dogs.
I haven't seen it.
It's no longer the red cup. You don't buy a red cup. You buy a hot dog. Now that might be a $25 hot dog because it sure ain't $10. Okay, now if you've got $25 for a hot dog, and you've got approximately 800 to 1,000 kids in these backyards, and I'm not kidding because I have stood on Semple Street during Semple Fest. I know how to look at a crowd. When you get them in these backyards, what kind of money are these guys taking in? And then we have our bar, our favorite bar, 226 Meyer. It throws dance parties. No cash, Venmo or Zillow, whatever it is.
So.
That's $25 to enter, and don't forget to take your work. Okay. Now, what we see after that is the kids coming out and,
peeing and puking all over the place.
it is kind of, we're seeing the same kind of behavior that you see over in the south side. It's just a little bit younger.
Well, sometimes I like to level set. I think it's important when we have these meetings and conversations that we're realistic about what we're, right? And everyone should walk away from here and go, you said, and then nothing happens because I'm just not going to do it. So I try to be as honest and forthright about what we can do, what we will do. And so right now we're in a conversation, we are in excuses aside because they don't really matter to you all. That doesn't really, our situation doesn't impact how you feel about the current environment. But we're working toward getting some of the parking responsibility to the entity which has it in their name. That's
The parking authority?
I do not have officers that I can dedicate for 3 days, for 3 hours to parking in this city in any of our areas. We don't have the personnel to do it. And so for me to suggest and take it because we would do it, it would be a flat out lie. We don't have the personnel to do some things like that, in addition to all the other responsibilities that zone 4 or any of our zones will be for our responsibility. So in that, when we're working toward hopefully that goal, next year, all of those zones will have traffic or motorcycles assigned to the zones. We can be a little more focused on all things traffic. Parking, traffic enforcement, all of the things that you described, that is, and will be their responsibility. But again, there is a finite number of that, right? And whether it's Shady Side or Squirrel Hill or Oakland, I hear the same complaints because people are just rather they just disregard parking in essence, and they've done it for quite some time. I mean, I've been here for 25 years. It's always been an issue in Oakland, and I guess it will continue to be so, especially with the influx of more people driving cars. But we will work toward enforcing it when we can. I don't prescribe to, unless it is like blocking your driveway, that's something is a police issue, because that is a safety issue for your home. You could be taking your husband or
I have a 96-year-old father.
whoever,
who
it
lives
doesn't
with
matter.
us.
You can be going somewhere that they need immediate assistance, and now you take it out of your drive, or you take it out of your driveway. We will always address those. As far as the noise complaints and the behavior of students, we were really successful, and I'm not sure, again, I'm just getting back, we were really successful with Duquesne and Duquesne Police and the university to hold Duquesne students accountable for behavior on the south side, to the point where they would face discipline procedures internally within the school for behavior in the south side. I don't know how Pitt looks at that, and that maybe the first of these conversations to start that conversation where we partner with Pitt Police. Quite obviously, if there are 200 kids, they're not from our neighborhoods, most likely, they're from the university, and therefore they're university students. And letting the judicial boards within the schools hold them accountable is much more effective and oftentimes much more expedited when they do it versus going to the natural system of citation in our court system, because they can do it in a much more expedited manner. Doing it without law, without the criminal justice system, I think oftentimes the better outcome. So I'd be willing to explore that. I'm not sure how we have in the past, if we have, but it's something that we need to do. They're their students at the end of the day, and Pitt Police are employed for that reason. So it'd be worthwhile to partner with Pitt. So when these large scale parties happen, and you can determine for the most part, they're majority students, then we can hold the students accountable. So there's a space to do that because we've done it elsewhere. Now it's just a matter of getting that partnership with the university and the police department, and I think we can have some impact. As far as the party and time of day and down on the one when you see it, and we triage the calls, like our communication center. If the vehicle or police officers are available, they're going to send them. If they're not, because there is some other pressing issues wherever, then the call gets triaged in that manner. So all I continue to do is encourage you when you see criminal behavior or you see behavior that's chaotic, disruptive, this is down on one. And it gets placed in the appropriate slot on the call scale of priorities, and we'll get to it and address it. But I think when some of these things can be a little more coordinated, especially when you say there's a house, you about 3 houses, they're always the same, they're probably always on Friday or Saturday, right? There's usually like the house is usually the house the whole semester or the whole school year. Oftentimes they have to change because they got a strong hold on markets. They found something that people buy, and more importantly, that maybe behavior goes unchecked, obviously not unnoticed. So
the thing is, we have the officers go and, they warn them. And that's fine, right? They stop for 10 minutes, officers, they go right back out. And you don't want to be calling you guys saying, Mom, again, and I know a lot of residents said, we want them to get citations right away. Okay. I don't know if that's going to solve it, but I think part of our problem is we don't have any kind of social environment really in Oakland off campus for the students. Okay. We've got a great underground music scene. We got a couple hundred people in the basement of a row house. Okay. And it's just very frustrating to us that it's a circle, it keeps going, nothing's changing.
Yeah.
It's just very, very frustrating.
And then what are the responsibilities of the Pitt Police? Why
you know, why can't they take care of that? Why do we have to have the city police? Why can't Pitt Police take care of all that? You know, when people have loud parties and, you know, what is their responsibilities and are they out at all hours of the day? Because it seems to me I never see them at night.
Well, I
When the kids are like destroying people's cars.
I think it would help us if we could meet with the pit officers that are out at night. Not the community officers that work during the day, but the officers that are actually going out. Because I'm pretty sure if I start naming addresses to them, they're going, oh, yeah.
Well, you know, because I go up there, you know, they're located up there on, with a million cars back there at night, all parked. And, you know, in a day they're gone. And I'm like, well, what do they do? You know, and they close up. You can't even get into that office, which maybe they should leave open all hours.
If I can just add something too, just because I normally work at nighttime. It responds to probably a lot of the calls here, especially the noise disturbances and that because we're every place else. They kind of suffer from the same thing we have. The night we had the incident down at Hillman Library, I was there for that, and it was 5 pit officers. That was it. That was all there was. So, you know, we all kind of have that universal issue with that. The Panther pit, very aware of that. We already had that closed down last year. And I know this weekend, we just worked the other night, and I know there's like 3 calls there in the same night with that. So we're starting to take all the reports and stuff again to forward that over to the LCD again.
Well,
They were already on the radar and they were shut down last year.
I was in Helsingford with our friend on Thursday, $250,000 fine. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that's the only thing we can do is just get through the process.
I know. What happened to the process of nuisance and disruptive property? You used to be able to know 3 strikes, and I believe it's code. That after they get 3 citations, that they can get pulled before disruptive property or nuisance property. I don't know which one to call it. Because we were down there with bootleggers one time and the problems that they were having. I would be very happy to see these houses get 3 citations and go before a disruptive property board, you know, and let the landlord do it. Because again, that's another avenue that we're not really seeing. The landlords. You know, hey, I just rented the place.
I think the director can speak to the disruptive property limits as it stands and where it's going. Probably less. Different than you remember.
So we in the process of relaunching disruptive property. Right now, we've been focusing on commercial property. Recently, and I was gonna try to look it up today, but I didn't get a chance. So we did send warning letters to a larger apartment complex here in Oakland. I just don't remember where it is at the moment. The main concern that we don't want to repeat is something we saw happen with disruptive properties before, is more around a landlord utilizing it as a weapon to evict. Sometimes inappropriate. So, you know, someone maybe on subsidized housing using a voucher, the landlord wants to get full market because maybe they bought the property from somebody else. Or maybe they just decided we don't want to deal with vouchers anymore. So they'll try to use different things, including the disruptive properties process as a way to evict people. So we want to make sure when we are looking at residential, which like I said, we're not yet, other than what we have started to do is multiple dwelling regulation. So what we brought up in the disruptive properties committee, the oversight group, which is myself, my assistant director, and legal advisor, policy advisor from the mayor's office. What we brought up is evaluation of what the problem is. So it's not so much like it used to be, if your grass was too high and PLI cited you 3 times, that would be marked as a disruptive problem. Those were the types of circumstances where we saw landlords doing it because they would say, well, that's the tenant's responsibility. They're not. What we're looking at here is more trash services like dumpsters that are overflowing. Um,
We
concrete,
know which large apartment.
Yeah.
Um,
That's my street.
concrete work that needs to be done, pointing, like things that would clearly not be something that's responsible, a tenant would be responsible or expected to do. The other thing is, we have been trying to do some early interventions, so when we get complaints and we think we're gonna start to do that, if we think there's a possibility, we'll reach out to the landlord first to see what we can do to help mitigate these issues. I say all that to say that disruptive properties, part of the reason it did go away is it's not a super strong way around habitual people, like the person you mentioned earlier. What happened, the thing that happens with disruptive properties when technically it's me that declared the property disruptive, they have the ability to appeal to the disruptive properties board, which that took us a little time to get in place, that is in place now. Then the disruptive properties board says whether it's upheld or not, and then at that point, we are allowed by city code to then bill the property owner for any services that we feel are necessary, or if they get frequent 911 calls. If we do have to do some sort of maintenance or cleanup, we bill the property owner. The most we can do then is clean the property if they fail to pay him. As you said, some folks don't know. Like, it's a very long process, so it's not an immediate, it's more of, I kind of consider it's us being a nuisance to them and trying to push them to be better neighbors. It's a way to communicate, it does help when there's future instances, it does get through. To some people, like, it's been very successful, we've had a couple of bars that were problematic that we've talked to, and not here necessarily, but in some of the communities. And the property owner wasn't aware of some of the activities, so then the property owner kind of pushes the bar to do that. Like I said, we're still kind of getting our feet under us on the disruptive property, so it'll take a little time. I know something that was brought up, I think in the email, was us utilizing PIT, or University of Pittsburgh Police, their complaints towards that. We're waiting, we have to get law to do an interpretation as to whether we can, because right now, when you read the disruptive properties ordinance, it says Pittsburgh Police, PLI, Animal Care and Control. It doesn't say whether we can use other police. So what we're looking at is that something we can do as it's written, or do we need to ask council to revise the code to expand it, that if it's Pitt Police or retain any police that have jurisdiction within city limits, that we can use their citations as well. And the other part is, there does have to be a citation involved. It can't just be a complaint or a police report. It has to be actually enough for an officer to cite someone for those specific things. So a lot of it is more PLI, occupancy issues, that sort of stuff.
Well, what do we do about properties that, as I said, you know, we've got a couple of properties for 8 years, throughout the school term. It's basically a weekend. I mean, I think when you have a 911 operator, they know this. That's the clear indication that this is happening. Is there any way that can be tracked? Just the call out? I mean, don't officers have to do a call out or a response sheet or something when they go to a property? Or if they get there and they don't write a citation, does that just go into thin air? It didn't happen.
I mean, the 911 record would always be there, whether an officer writes a report or not. It would be more of a matter, it's usually what, in those circumstances, we would ask you to coordinate with your commander and the lieutenants, so then they're aware and they can actually run some of those reports to see how many 911 calls, see what type of activity, and as the chief said earlier, like a coordinated effort around, okay, this house is doing this every weekend. Let's work with Pitt Police, let's work with some other folks to maybe do what we can. Now, there's another change that we're working through with, that you brought up earlier, which was Simple Fest. I don't think it happened. Did it? Okay. We didn't permit it this year. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, they did.
We did not.
I'll have to look the data, I have pictures and video.
They might have done the party, but we didn't, so we have changed some of the processes around, and we're working to enforce them a little stronger around how you get involved. That if it's. And the logistics around it, but if it's a tenant. Versus a property owner, that there's some extra steps they have to go through to that block party. And that neighbors have to be a part of it. We also are now, we're no longer just doing it based on the name, but also the location. Prior. Folks had said we couldn't do it, we couldn't deny them the permit based on the name of the person, but it had to be on the actual location.
I think it was spring, Liz. I think it was around St. Patrick's Day, I think is.
But like I said, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in the city that are not permanent either.
This
So
was permanent,
Oh.
I verified that, with the office, city council office, and with the events office. And we ended up with one block of Temple that had. I'm gonna call it park again, probably 3,500 students, and it did get shut down eventually. I had a lot of landlords calling me on that one, why did you tell us this was happening? I'm like. Why didn't I tell you? Look at a second. Your tenants just threw up in their house, to a couple hundred of their friends, and you're telling me I should have called. No, they should, but I don't understand how they got the block permit at all, because in theory, you're supposed to have everybody on the block sign off on it.
Yeah, it's not, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I've done one for it.
Yeah.
So, and this is, you know, it started at 9:30 in the morning. And by about 1 o'clock, I had another job that I had to go to, and man, Griffin's there, I'm like, I'm done. Yeah, and eventually it did clear that out. But it shouldn't have happened, well said, shouldn't have happened. Okay, and I understand that process is getting tightened up. It is hard, because if they do all the steps and they do it illegally, how do you stop it? But when you know that there's not 3,500 people living on that one block, it's something. Yeah,
Right.
it's gonna happen. But that's the thing about the nuisance properties, when, if there's some way that we can get an accountability for all of these calls that we're having to make, that the residents have to make about these properties, if there's some accountability for that. A lot of times I totally understand, if you've got 500 kids in the backyard, what officer is gonna lock into that?
Well, one, they can't.
Right.
One, they can't, but legally they cannot. So there's some stipulations by law that prohibit them from doing so. They have to be let in, right? So we fought that battle and lost plenty of times. We just can't go into your house, into your curtilage, your property, right? If we can't, and oftentimes it's not, they look underage. You don't know it to be a fact. There's nothing that police are allowed to do, and they've done that. We've done it. The police in the 90s where we open the house, get out, pick everybody out, go to the backyard. Those days are done. And we're just not permitted to do it anymore. It's unlawful, and therefore I can't direct my officers to behave in that manner. However, I think it goes back to the record point. What we did with Duquesne, all these Pitt students have registered addresses. And we know, so when we say this is the address, Duquesne runs that address through their database, and it matches Larry Scarlett, the student. Now, they bring in Larry Scarlett, the student, your behavior, this is the complaint, this is how many times you've had the complaint. This is, now they do their judicial review, and usually once they put that student or those students on notice, the problem resolves itself, because at least they don't have the area. And so that's, I think, a direction that's probably better suited up for us to go, so that we can actually have some outcomes, some accountable outcomes.
Okay, but we've been told over the years that Pitt does not have the off-campus addresses.
So I know the Pitt's working on collecting the off-campus addresses right now. That's being done through the new Office of Off-Campus Services. So that's certainly a start. So actually, let me ask, and this, obviously I could ask our officers, but just sort of, for the group here, when a call is made, and the city police unit responds to it, it's obviously Pitt students. what is there, if citations, citations are made, or if they're not made, is there, I know that, because I'll talk with our officers, and I know that they'll get called to certain disruptions. Is there a protocol for, how, when city police then call Pitt police to assist, or is it just usually police respond?
Oftentimes it's in favor, correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes it's just the response.
Yeah.
Now, I think we can be much more coordinated in the outcome, right? So because Pitt's acting as a de facto Pittsburgh Bureau of Police and responding to calls that they wouldn't necessarily have to, they're doing it to assist us, they're doing it because they're very aware it's their students. So they've just kind of over the years have assumed that responsibility. Now, we can coordinate the reporting aspects of it, which we don't now, but we're changing our reporting system. I believe that it uses RMS and Central Square. So there's a way in which we will communicate a lot easier, a lot better, a lot more often. But in that, there has to be agreement on both sides that there's some place for this to go after, right? So that we've all now coordinated, and now the university is going to accept all of this information and take action. And that's how we would, or that's how we would do, or that's how I would suggest it.
Yeah, and I know that, certainly things like that have happened before, and so we would be open to that, and that, the city police respond, they provide information to our officers, who then does a conduct referral, and so the officers might not do any citation, but they have the sort of in their system, they have the ability to make a conduct referral, and so it's just, I think, a matter of making sure that the information, if it is a city response that Pitt's not a part of, they're able to get that. And again, we are finally in the process now of being able to we have a system in place that we're using to collect information about the repeat addresses and those type of things, and sort of seeing those things and when they're coming up. And so then when we decide, as a group of officers in our conduct office, which is, obviously separate, how they're going to respond to that. And so is it, knock and talk with our police unit? Is it something that we're actually going to refer to conduct and that sort of thing? And so, but that's right now we're using that off of the information that we get from our officer responses. So if we're able to incorporate city responses into that process too, I think that would be helpful. So I don't know. I'd have to talk with our officers what that exchange of information looks like, but that would certainly be welcome, because then we could have more of a comprehensive understanding of the problem areas and homes. So.
Okay, and the analysis is not difficult for us to capture. So every time you call 911 about 123 Central Street, our system acknowledges that there's a call there. So regardless of what the outcome was, now we'll dictate the outcome, but it'll always tell us that, hey, there were 15 calls at 123 Central, and these were what they were.
But do you do anything about that?
As in,
there are 15 calls to 123 Semple. Maybe we should look at 123 Semple a little bit more often.
well,
Like, is there anything that's done? I mean, you could have all the data you want, and if you do nothing with it, you might as well not even get the data.
I guess that's maybe the question then. Here's that coordination that I think is necessary, because we oftentimes aren't going to pull that data unless requested, right? And then when requested, what do we do with it? This is where this coordination needs to occur. It hasn't in the past to a level that satisfies it, which I understand. And oftentimes we wouldn't pull it for any other reason unless there was a crime event there. And so the nuisance in that regard wouldn't dictate the crime event. The 311 complaint may direct us there, and then our community resource officer could make contact. But again, then what's the outcome? If there's no accountability, there's no consequence, then they do exactly what you said. The police go away and they continue to behave. So my goal is not to just continue to respond and not have any ability to influence conduct. And the only way you influence conduct is there to be consequence. So what I want as an officer is going there to not be able to do nothing, because in short order, the students or the occupants of the home will realize there's nothing that can be done, and they become more.
They know it already.
Right, so I think it's
So if
The other thing I was going to say is we are because of the Office of Community Health and Safety and their co-response and what we call the high utilizer review programs. We have one data analyst. We're hiring a couple more that are actually going to start looking at, not even for any specific reason, just frequent 911 calls to any address, to then make an assessment. It could be because of a mental health issue, it could be because of a physical health issue, it could be because of neighborhood complaints, whatever it is. But then they'll flag that and push that down through the chain. Like right now, there's not a process unless a neighborhood or community or a commander happens to notice, hey, we're getting a lot of calls to this address. It's not really automated, it's more of a, I keep hearing it, or somebody's complaining about it. This is gonna start to be more of a consistent look at addresses that we're getting frequent calls for, because what we're trying to do is reduce 911 calls for police, fire, EMS, everybody, to make sure we're being more proactive. I'll give you an example with the fire bureau. You may or may not know this, you know, it's the old commercial of the push your button because you fall down. Life alert, and our fire bureau are the ones that respond to it. If it's just I fell down and they need assistance getting back up. Those are usually a precursor for some underlying medical conditions. Usually means they're probably going to start to use the system more. They're going to start to use 911 more, maybe EMS, but they haven't gotten to the point where they're using EMS. So we have the high util for people in need of service programming, where they have actually, because of that program, evaluating that specific call set as a part of our pilot. They reduced those calls citywide by 51%. By finding people that are calling 911 frequently, trying to figure out the root cause as to why they're calling. So I say all that to say we are starting to try to find ways to better utilize that data as we have newer systems that are easier to pull that data from, like the new police RMS system, which they actually just launched yesterday. So it's been in the making for 7 years, and they finally have launched it. But that new system provides us with much more real-time data and much faster data. So we aren't ignoring the data. It's just a matter of figuring out ways to collect it and have the staff that can focus on reviewing. Hey, this house is getting 15 calls. They call the commander, rather than right now. The process is the commander calls our data analyst team to say, hey, can you look at, you know, we've had 15 calls here. Can you look and figure out why? Like, it's more of a proactive approach, but that's taken us some time to build out.
I don't want this to sound hopeless, like we're not, this doesn't matter, right? But I want, when we walk away from that, I want some action items for us to pursue, so that when we meet again, that we have a viable option to at least address things that have been decades long occurring since the 1940s, right? So
I think it's gotten worse.
yeah, but it shouldn't. In no way should feel like our hostage in our home. So we understand that it is critically important to us, especially for those that are full-time residents and within the city.
It's not even like hostage in your home. It's sort of like the movie Groundhog Day. It's, you wake up again and now it's new people are living there and you go through the same thing again. And, you know, like when you raise your children, anybody who has children, you teach them and it takes them a while. You repeat a few times, but then at a certain point they catch on. Well, this one is like the kids are perpetually 18.
It's the same here.
They're 18. 18, and I'm not 18.
You were probably VO'd at me when I was in Oakland at 19.
If you were on you, yes.
I didn't park, but I know.
Something else that I think a lot of people don't realize with Oakland is we have a significant number of seniors.
Yep.
Living on their own a lot.
And a lot of them are
I
terrified
have
to call the
with
police.
Maria. They're all named Maria. There's 4. All named Maria that have lived here forever and a day, and they're not going anywhere. They call me once a week. And I'm learning a lot of Italian that I probably don't want to know.
We go to that.
You know, and they're frustrated. They're very, you know, and they're scared.
They're afraid. They're afraid.
They're afraid.
Some of the older people on our street, if we've talked to them, we call the police. Oh, no. It's like, we've had them with, you know, they're like, they won't call. And I've gotten to the point where I'm being the crabby old lady and I'm calling all the time, you know, I'm just like, come on, behave.
Couple of issues. I don't care what corner of Oakland you stand on, either Fulton or Queen or Kissimmee here, whatever corner, pick one. People fly through the red lights. It happens every day. I do a lot of walking through Oakland. I can stand on any corner and for sure the red light, and there comes the car straight through.
Also bicycle and scooter.
Also, there's been a lot of assaults and robberies with the Pitt students recently. Are you patrolling Oakland at all?
Okay, we have a fair amount of resources dedicated to Oakland in conjunction with Pitt. But Pitt patrols Oakland because in protection of its students. So
Right.
there are far more Pitt police officers in Oakland than there would be city police. I
Definitely.
mean, I don't know which side, but they, typically when I left, they were 100-person police department. Even if they have 60, all of that resource is dedicated to Oakland. So they are very aware of the safety issues for their student population. They stay on top of that. They have in the past, so I can't say there should be a situation where that's not being addressed, but.
It just seems that there's been a lot recently.
Yeah, I can address it with, whether it was the issues with the prowlers, but actually we just identified, we had that earlier in the year and the one recently, the assaults on Atwood.
Atwood is bad.
Some of the other ones, yes, we've, well, a lot of that's been solved already, and, also we put out weekly, proactive patrols throughout the zone. And there's always, including this week, one of those assigned to Oakland. That's based on some of the activity that's happened in the last couple, days prior to that week. So we've created those areas where we give a little extra attention to. We have noticed we have some trends going up in those areas. So that has been included. And yes, Oakland's part of that. We have all the other neighborhoods in the zone too. So we also try to spread that out in different places that we're having issues. But yes, Oakland's almost all of the place.
What about lighting? Why couldn't they get those bright lights? The new ones that really light up. I mean, like Atwood Street would definitely be one of those streets.
See all
It's
the
always
pizza
dark and dingy
Very good.
and
Actually, you come up for it. It's dark.
I mean, I think in those areas, they should put those really bright lights that,
Now that's
Yeah, I-
getting into zone there.
Yeah. No, well, they're coming off the parkway, okay? Zoom, 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 and then all of a sudden they're at Track Avenue and you have to drop like a rock. They don't drop like a rock. Okay, they just keep going. If we could get the lights even staggered more, which I have suggested to go with, I know CMU did the whole project down in Liberty, well, let's do something closer to home, guys. Because I have people that, my residents that are employees and this is around work. And they're like, well, we had a walking group, but it's just getting too dangerous. I'm like, dangerous walking group, that's what it is. It is, because they just come flying up there and if they get the lights just right, they can go from the parkway to South Oakland, probably at a 45 foot.
The construction all over
That's
hasn't
what I
helped
like.
that.
Yeah. And
Because
that's
you just, you get to a spot where you think you can drive and, people will go faster, but that at some point will resolve itself, I'm assuming.
There is, I know. You said she was gonna set up a meeting for you with them, so there are some of the things you talked about. We have also have been working closely with them around is the built environment, things that we can do to prevent the need for officers to even do that, which is speed humps, those sorts of things. I'm not saying we can do those on the bigger roads, but there's a lot of different things they can do, especially around parking at intersections. You may have seen some of the bump outs they'll do. It can be a physical bump out, or it can sometimes be just a line painting, some diverters, flower pots.
They're not always
et cetera.
safer. I'm just gonna
There's a-
say, they don't make it safer. Because when you're making a turn, you're now out into oncoming traffic to try to
Well,
get
so
past the bump out.
Some of that is to keep people from parking too close to the intersection too, so I would leave it to
I
Tony to
realize it's a
explain that,
problem,
but
yeah.
I do understand that some of the theory.
Yeah, that's
behind it.
another
It
issue,
it
yeah.
is a matter of trying to find that balance between the built environment, people's behavior,
I understand.
and safety. But it's also to reduce the need for 911 calls for parking enforcement. It's more of a proactive approach. Something we are trying to push through with, Councilperson Strasburger is a big proponent of it, is red light cameras. There's some state law that needs to get changed to allow that. We did have a program, but nobody ever kind of did stuff with it. I think that the idea behind that has changed now some with both in public safety and council as well as Domi. To have better ways that are more effective than, because you all know, if an officer's sitting in an intersection, people will stop sometimes. But if they're not, then it's not as effective. So rather than being always enforcement, if it's a camera system that we can then just not bill, but send a citation or something to the driver. It has been shown more effective. Pennsylvania just haven't kind of quite caught up.
That would only work for cars though, right?
What's that?
That would only work for cars, because we've had problems with, it's like even now driving at night, where there's a scooter coming at you down Atwood going the wrong way, or a bicycle come with no lights and so that wouldn't register with a camera, right? Correct, I mean.
No,
Right.
there's no citation that pick them up. And then we can't fix it all.
No, I know.
It might be.
Got it.
Right.
Improving the processes so that we don't feel like we're a bunch of hamsters on the wheel. And we're not doing it just for the residents, the long-term residents, or the short-term residents, or whatever. It's just the general health of the community is vitally important. This is the third economic driver in the state of Pennsylvania.
So I ask you this, so we leave again, I try to be as action oriented as possible. But the things we talked about today, right? What one thing in a month from now would you like us to focus on, prioritize, right? What one thing, one issue that when we walk out of here, is it the collaboration, coordination with it about a specific 2 or 3 homes? Or I would like you guys to tell us, and then a month from now, we will report back with what that collaboration looks like. Because this is what community engagement is supposed to look like. If we walk out here with 50 issues, I assure you, a month from now, you will be equally as disappointed as you were prior to us getting here. But if we walk out of here with 1 or 2 things we know we can work on over the next month or 2, going into the first week of 2024, I think you guys feel you're being heard. We have some solutions, we come up with a collective strategy to address something. And that's the ask. And as a group, you guys decide that for us.
I go with whatever you say, you see more of the problems.
Well, I would say the collaboration between the university's force and the city's force.
Yeah.
Greater communication, sharing the data, a little more transparency would be very cool. I think that would be a step in the right direction, because it would help make some progress.
Okay.
The commander was at Oakland last week, and he requested that I send him a list. I have my top 12 favorite houses, and I'm sending those to him right now. And these are addresses that it's not like, oh, this year, this is several years.
So Lieutenant Colonel and Commander Bonansky will liaise with Pitt PD, will work with you and the university and see if we can come up with a very similar strategy that we use with the Kane and the South Side. And in that's our direction, that's our marching orders from you all as a group as I hear it for the next couple months.
Yeah, I definitely, I have a idea of some of the things I think that could work for Pitt, but if you have best practice, like you said, you already have a process in place with Duquesne. If that's something that's working and you're finding success with it, let's see if we can translate that directly or if we need to, adapt it, obviously. And so that's,
I'm also on South Shore, so.
Right, it was here, we did it in 13 to 15, it had a tremendous impact on behavior in the South Side, right? Especially from the students, and at that time, it was a different clientele than we have today, it was a different issue, same kind of issue, but less violent. But it was students that were creating havoc in our neighborhoods, and in that, there was no accountability prior to this. Once they realized that it's not just police, not just the neighbors complaining, it's not just the landlord, but it's mom and dad's tuition that is now impacted, and my furtherance of my education at this prestigious university is impacted. I think you start behaving a little bit.
My feeling is that the reason they're all going to the south side is because of all the bars. When I lived here in the 20s, when I was 20, there were a million bars on Forbes Avenue.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go to the south side. And I just feel that Pitt had something to do with it, those bars closed. That's why we don't have that trouble in Oakland, which I'm happy about. Because that's exactly what would be going on here too. If Forbes Avenue was, bar after bar.
Oh, everyone,
They're both.
I could go, I went out here every weekend in the 90s and had bar to bar to bar to bar. And I'm not nearly as much to South Side, and I don't know if there ever has been as much over here, but a fair amount.
That when she was in her 20s, so that was probably the not.
Yeah, it was right.
No. There was egg and there was places with Justine's
And actually, we're transparency with the community and community involvement in this, that would be great. Okay, I'm sorry that we kind of got chopped up a little bit by technology tonight, but I think this has been good. It's been a good discussion. I will be talking with Domi because there's a couple of other little problems we have.
Have you met Jan, our district?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
No, several times. So, but I want to thank everybody for coming and thank anybody that's on the computer here. And thank you, Justin, for staying.
Sure.
And God bless technology.
we got a recording, at least so here.
So, we would love to have you back again. If you just want to pop in for a couple minutes and say, hey, this is going on. You have some updates for us. We have an email that goes out to the Oakland community. We also maintain various social media outlooks and stuff, and I'm working on Reddit. Particularly with the university too. And I know my dear blessed landlord alliance would love to do that. Wow.
Well, thanks for having us. So you're gonna be in touch with Miracle?
Yeah.
And then you guys can loop me in and whatever information you need, we'll work on it together. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
One last question. I think you guys heard anything on rental registration?
On what?
Rental registration.